Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Parishara Stotar Sata Shri Shriman, His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Kantra Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Tagore Premanande Hari Hari Mo. Namo Vishnu Krishna Vishnu 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 Santi Nichava Vishnu 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 Vishnu. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter number 7, titled Further Inquiries by Vidra, text number 12. Save nivritti dharmena. Save nivritti dharmena. Vasudevanukampaya. Vasudevanukampaya. Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena. Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena. Tirodhate saneriha. Tirodhate saneriha. Savai nivritti dharmena. Vasudevanukampaya. Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena. Tirodhate saneriha. Savai nivritti dharmena. Vasudevanukampaya. Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena. Tirodhate saneriha. Savai nivritti dharmena. Vasudevanukampaya. Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena. Tirodhate saneriha.
Vasudevanukampaya. Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena. Tirodhate saneriha. Savai dharmena. Vasudevanukampaya. Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena.
Word for translation: Sa, that, Vai, also, Nivritti, detachment, Dharmena, by engagement, Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Anukampaya, by the mercy of, Bhagavat, in relation with the Personality of Godhead, Bhakti Yogena, by linking up, Tirodhate, diminishes, Sane, gradually, Iha, in this existence. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: by that misconception of self-identity can be diminished gradually by the mercy of the Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, through the process of devotional service to the Lord in the mode of detachment. Purport: the quivering quality of mature existence, which comes from identification with matter or from thinking oneself under the material influence of philosophical speculation to be God, can be eradicated by devotional service to the Lord by the mercy of the Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. As discussed in the first canto, because the application of devotional service to Lord Vasudeva invites pure knowledge, it quickly detaches one from the material conception of life, and thus one revives one's normal condition of spiritual existence, even in this life, and frees one from the material winds which cause one to quiver. Only knowledge and devotional service can elevate one towards the path of liberation. The development of knowledge for the purpose of knowing everything without rendering devotional service is considered fruitless labor, and one cannot get the desired result by such labor of love. Lord Vasudeva is pleased by devotional service only, and thus his mercy is realized by association with pure devotees of the Lord. Pure devotees of the Lord are transcendental to all material desires, including the desire for the results of fruitive activities and philosophical speculation. If one wants to acquire the mercy of the Lord, he has to associate with pure devotees. Such association alone can by degrees release one from the quivering elements. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshulmnitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we're continuing our discussion from the 7th chapter of Canto 3, titled Further Inquiries by Vidura. Today reading text 12. I'll read the translation again. By that misconception of self-identity can be diminished gradually by the mercy of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, through the process of devotional service to the Lord in the mode of detachment. So as we were discussing over the past couple of days, we've seen how Vidura at the start of this chapter, he asks two main questions, one in regard to the Jiva and the other in regard to the Ishvara. And Maitreya Rishi has already answered the question in regard to the Krishna, or Krishna as the Ishvara. And now Maitreya Rishi, in the last two texts, he was answering the question in regard to the Jiva. As the question was, how is it that the Jiva, even though the Jiva is pure in consciousness, the Jiva is purely spiritual, how is it that it comes into material existence, gets entangled in material existence, and how is it that it's suffering in material existence, despite the presence of Krishna in the hearts of all conditioned souls? So Maitreya Rishi, he's been explaining that actually it's all due to avidya, or ignorance. Out of ignorance, one comes in this material world and one imagines himself to be this material body, and simply by that misidentification of oneself with this body, due to that misidentification, all sorts of suffering takes place. And this misidentification is just like Maitreya Rishi was explaining to Vidura, that is just like an illusion or a hallucination or like a dreamlike state of the living entity. Because the actual, factual, real position of the Jiva is that the Jiva is the servant of Krishna. But the Jiva, he wants to enjoy separate from Krishna. And because that's not factually possible, because by constitutionally he is Prakriti, constitutionally he is the energy of the Lord, so constitutionally he has to serve the Lord. Because that's not possible, therefore, Prabhupada explains that the Jiva has to be covered over by ignorance. And later on in this canto, we will see there's one chapter which describes the creation done by Brahma. And in that chapter it's explained that before Brahma creates anything else, the first thing that Brahma creates are 5 layers of ignorance. And in the purport, or in this section, Prabhupada explains that for the Jiva to function properly in this material world, the first thing that needs to be happen is that he has to forget his real identity of being Krishna's servant. Because the whole reason this material world was created was to facilitate the Jiva's desire to be the controller, to be the enjoyer, and to enjoy just like Krishna. So therefore, before Brahma creates anything else in this material universe, the first thing he creates is 5 layers of ignorance, by which the Jiva can completely forget his real identity or his real swarupa, or being Krishna's servant. So what are those 5 layers? It goes sequentially, like stronger and stronger. The first layer is called tamas. Tamas means, as we were discussing, the ignorance of one's the ignorance of self-knowledge, the ignorance of that knowledge or of that gyan, that I am Krishna's servant. The purpose of my existence is to serve Krishna, is to bring Krishna pleasure. So that's the first layer of ignorance Brahma created, is tamas, by which one forgets his original swarupa of being Krishna's servant. Then next comes moha. So slowly it will increase more and more. Moha literally means illusion. And what is the illusion? After forgetting the real self-knowledge of one's swarupa, one then comes under the illusion of thinking, I am this body. So Brahma, he gives different living entities, different bodies according to their karma. And due to this second layer of illusion, or this second layer of ignorance called moha, whichever body the living entity gets, he starts identifying with that body. Okay, I am a cat, I am a dog, I am a demigod, I am a naga, I am a great king, I am a crocodile. In this way, by the second layer of ignorance, the soul, he starts identifying himself with this body. Then it increases even more, the layer of ignorance. Then comes mahamoha. Mahamoha is a stronger form of moha, by which one not only starts identifying himself with his body, but one's self-identification increases to include other material objects. And one starts thinking, okay, this thing which is in my possession, this is mine, this is my wife, this is my home, this is my house, this is, the dog will think, or this is my backyard and this is my territory. If anyone else comes, I'm going to bark at them and ask them to go away. And in this way, one's layer of ignorance increases more and more. Firstly, by moha, he identifies himself with the body. Then by mahamoha, he then starts identifying himself with the people around him, different material objects, and he starts developing this sense of possessiveness, false proprietorship, that this is mine, this is mine. Then next comes tamishra. Tamishra means the anger that arises from frustration, but when one's material desires aren't fulfilled. So one is under moha, thinking I'm this body. One is under mahamoha, thinking these are my family, friends, these are my material possessions. And using these things, he tries to enjoy, like Krishna in the material world. But when he's frustrated, when his desires aren't satisfied, then tamishra comes, the fourth layer of ignorance, by which one gets frustrated and one becomes angry. And then lastly, the last layer of ignorance is called andha tamishra. And andha tamishra, in the purport, Prabhupada explains, andha tamishra means the conception that at death everything is finished. And Prabhupada explains this is the conception of the atheists, that according to them, they're this body, and at the time of death everything is finished. So therefore, whatever time we have in this world, in this body, let me try and enjoy my senses fully. So that's the last layer of ignorance. So in this way, Prabhupada explains, before Brahma goes on to create anything else, the first thing he has to do is cover the living entity with these 5 layers of ignorance. Then only can the living entity function properly. And in this section, the example that Maitreya Rishi is giving to Vidura to help him understand how the living entity is coming in contact with material nature and how he is functioning, he's giving, in the previous text 11, he was giving the example of a moon being reflected on water. I'll read the translation of text 11. As the moon reflected on water appears to the seer to tremble due to being associated with the quality of the water, so the self associated with matter appears to be qualified as matter. So we have the moon, and the moon is reflected on a body of water. And the body of water, due to the wind, it starts moving here and there. And the reflection that one sees on that body of water, on the river, on the lake, the reflection of the moon will seem to also appear to quiver or tremble or move and shake. But is the moon actually moving like that, or is the moon actually trembling? Is the moon actually quivering? Maitreya Rishi is saying no. It just appears to be looking like that, but actually the moon is stationary, it's not moving like that. So in the same way, what Maitreya Rishi is trying to explain to Vidura is that when the jiva comes into this material world, he enters into like a hallucinatory kind of state of existence, or like an illusory state of existence. Just like it seems like the moon is trembling, it seems like the moon is quivering, but actually it's not. In the same way, it seems that when the soul is coming and taking a material body, according to his condition, he's thinking that, okay, I am a great king, or I am this kind of animal, or I am a bird, I am a man, I am a female, I am this person coming from this country. So in this way, one goes under this illusion. But actually, all of this is not true. All of this is false. Just like it's false that the moon is trembling. It just appears like that because of the reflection. So that's the example that Maitreya Rishi is trying to portray to Vidura, that the experiences of the jiva in this mature existence, the sufferings he undergoes through, the happiness, distress, in the course of him trying to gratify his senses, it's all actually false. It's all illusory. It's not actually factual. What is factual is his real identity as Krishna's servant. And actually this analogy that Maitreya Rishi is giving to Vidura, it comes up a few times in the Bhagavatam. If you remember in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, in Krishna book, the same example, a very similar example, Vasudeva, he gives to Kamsa. So if you remember, at the start of Krishna book, Kamsa is about to kill Devaki due to the prophecy. And Vasudeva initially, he tries different tactics. Firstly, he tries to glorify Kamsa, that Kamsa, you're such a great king. Your reputation is so great. What will happen to your reputation if you kill your own sister, This is such a cowardly act. Kings, they're not supposed to fight with, women. And what to speak of your own sister? And today is also her wedding day. If you kill your own sister on her wedding day, what will people speak about you? Your great reputation as a great king will go down. But that doesn't work. Then Vasudeva, he starts preaching to Kamsa in the science of Atma Tattva, the science of body and the soul, explaining that anyway, death is going to come, for we're all born and we all have to die sometime, and death is sure to come. And it's not like you can escape death just by killing this child. It's not like, just by killing Devaki, it's not that you'll escape death. Death will still come to you anyway. So why just to protect your body, which is going to die anyway, why do you commit such a sinful act like this and go more suffering in the future? And in the course of explaining to Kamsa the science of body and soul, Vasudeva, he gives different examples. One example he gives is that of a caterpillar. And he says that just like a caterpillar, it's on a plant, and the caterpillar, it goes from one leaf to another. It's crawling on one leaf, and then it let goes of that leaf and jumps to the other leaf. Then it crawls on that leaf, then it let goes of that leaf and jumps on another leaf. In the same way, the soul is presently situated in one body, but at the time of death, the soul will leave that body, go to another body. Then after he dies, then he will leave that body, go to another body. So the soul is eternal, so there's no need to worry. In this way, Vasudeva, he preaches to Kamsa. Then he gives this similar example that Maitreya Rishi is giving. He explains to Kamsa that just like different luminaries in the sky, the stars, the moon or the sun, they get reflected differently on different bodies of water. So if you have a still lake where there's not much winds, there's not much flow of current, and you see the reflection of the sun in that particular lake, that reflection will look different to the reflection that's there in a rushing waves of a river. In the river, the water will be moving very fast, and if you look at the same reflection of the sun, it's the same sun, but it will look completely different. In the same way, Prabhupada, he further elaborates on the analogy in the purport. Prabhupada explains, if you take oil, in the oil, if you look at the reflection, it will look completely different to what it looks like in another liquid. In this way, in different liquids, the same sun or the same moon or the same stars appears differently. In some liquids, the sun seems very skinny and, very tight. In other liquids, the sun becomes very fat and stout. In other liquids, the sun becomes very wavy due to the currents or the waves of the liquid. So in this way, in different liquids, the same sun appears differently. So in the same way, the soul, due to his karma, due to his desires, he takes up different material bodies. And he appears differently in different times and circumstances, in different bodies it takes. Sometimes the soul takes the body of a great king and it seems very powerful. Other times the soul takes the body of a tiny ant and it seems so insignificant. Other times the soul becomes a great Brahma. Other times the soul becomes a resident of the lower planetary systems. So just like the same sun appears differently in different bodies of water, in the same way, the soul or the same jiva takes on different material bodies and appears differently. But this is all illusory. This is not actually the real identity of the soul. And again, the same analogy, Krishna he gives to Uddhava in Uddhava Gita, also in 11th canto. Same thing Krishna explains to Uddhava. In that example, Krishna is using the exact same analogy, but instead of the moon, Krishna is saying a tree. Just like a tree is reflected in water, and the tree appears to tremble in water, in the same way the jiva appears to be enjoying happiness, distress, pleasure and pains, but these are all illusory. Another example Krishna gives to Uddhava in the same verse, Krishna explains that just like when someone, he starts spinning round and round and round, he just starts twirling, just like little kids, just for fun, they'll just twirl around in circles and circles and circles. Or sometimes during kirtan, we'll hold each other's hand and we'll twirl each other in circles. Now after twirling in circles again and again and again, then you stop, then what happens? Then you become very dizzy. And in that dizzy state of consciousness, it seems that the whole room, or it seems like the whole surrounding, or it seems like the whole world starts also twirling around and round and round. But actually, is that true? No. The room is not rotating in a circle. The world around us is not rotating in a circle. It's just the illusory state of consciousness which we ourselves put ourselves into. So in the same way, Krishna, he explains the same point to Uddhava. That just like a person who's been rotating round and round, to him it seems that the world around him is spinning in a circle, but actually the world is not spinning. Actually, due to his illusory or hallucinatory state of consciousness, it seems that the world around him is spinning. So in the same way, Krishna explains, in the same way, when the jiva, he takes birth in this material world, illusorily he's thinking that he's doing this, he's doing that, he's experiencing this pleasure, he's experiencing that suffering, but actually all of this is false, all of this is illusory. Just like for that person who's been rotating, just like he sees the world around him spinning, that's illusory. In the same way, all of this is also illusory. So what can we learn from this? From this we can learn the temporary nature of material existence, and we can learn detachment, that how all these different things that's happening, it's all temporary. As Prahlad Maharaj, he explains in his prayers, Punars Charvita Charvananam, that we've already done these things in so many countless lifetimes, undergone all these different pleasures and sufferings of material existence. So all these different things that come upon us through life, different happiness, pain, suffering, we shouldn't take it so seriously. And that's why you'll see in Gita, so many verses in so many different chapters. Krishna again and again, he emphasizes this point of how, as a yogi, one should be detached from the externals. One should be detached amidst pains and pleasures, happiness, distress, praise and insult. This is a very important point, as Prabhupada explains. Repetition of a point means that it's very important. So by understanding all this philosophy, how this our whole existence, material existence, all illusory, and we've just undergoing this temporary illusory existence, then one starts developing a sense of detachment. Just like sometimes we'll be sleeping and we won't be fully sleeping, we'll be like half asleep and we'll be half awake. And in that half asleep state, in our mind we'll be thinking of something, like some kind of dream we'll be having. But because we're not fully in sleep, we understand it's just a dream and we don't take it so seriously. So devotees, they're in this body and they're undergoing different pains and pleasures. But because they have this real knowledge that actually all this material existence is so temporary, what's the point of all this? So therefore, they don't take whatever praise comes to them so seriously. They don't take whatever insults comes to them so seriously. They don't take the so-called happiness, distresses and sufferings that comes upon them so seriously, because they understand that this whole existence is just like a dreamlike state and so temporary. So in this way, they're aloof, or they're detached from all these external things that's happening in their life, and instead they just fully zoom in and they just simply focus on Krishna's service. Another example that comes to mind, it's a bit different, but it's also very nice, very graphic example. This one is given by Narad Muni to King Prachina Barishat. So King Prachina Barishat, he was very grossly engaged in karma kanda, and Narad Muni, feeling compassion for him, that this king is a descendant of Dhruva Maharaj, and look what he's doing, he's not living up to his great heritage. In Bhagavad Gita, in that famous sloka, Matra Spasas Tukonteya, Sitosana Sukha Dukkada, Agama Paino Nityas, Tamstu Tikshasha Bharata. In that sloka, Prabhupada, he explains in the purport that Krishna in this verse, he is glorifying Arjuna, so addressing Arjuna based on his background from both his mother's side and his father's side. So from his father's side, he's addressing him as Bharata. That Arjuna, you're a great descendant of Bharata, and therefore because you're a great descendant of Bharata, don't do this great sinful activity of running away from the battlefield. It is your responsibility to act accordingly because you come from such a great heritage of Bharat. And he also addresses him as Kaunteya, that not only is your heritage from your father's side so great, but your heritage from your mother's side is also so great also. So because you come from such a great background, it is your responsibility to act properly. Otherwise, you bring infamy to your own descendants, to your forefathers coming from both sides. And at the end of this purport, Prabhupada explains that with great heritage comes great responsibility. If one is coming from a great heritage, then that responsibility is there with that person to act accordingly. Because if he doesn't act accordingly, he'll bring ill fame, he'll bring ill words to his predecessors, and in this way he'll do disservice to his great forefathers. So in the same way, as devotees, our heritage is coming from Prabhupada, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the 6 Goswamis Vrindavan. So because we're also coming from such a great heritage, it is our duty, it is also our responsibility to act properly and accordingly. Otherwise, if we misbehave, if we don't act accordingly, then again, as Krishna is saying to Arjuna, we will bring ill fame to Prabhupada, we will bring infame, to Mahaprabhu's movement, and therefore it's our duty or responsibility to act accordingly. So in the same way, Narad Muni, he was thinking like this, that this king Prachina Bharishat, he is coming from such a great dynasty of Dhruva Maharaj. But look at him, even though he is coming in the dynasty of Dhruva Maharaj, he was a pure devotee Lord, who got direct darshan of the Lord, who by the Lord's mercy got the abode of the Lord himself in Swetadeep. Look what he's doing, he's just engaging in karma kanda, just like an ordinary materialistic king. Shame on this king. He's not acting according to the great heritage he's coming from. So Narad Muni, he feels compassionate and he starts preaching to King Prachina Bharishat, and this story is given at the end of 4th canto. One example that Narad Muni he gives to King Prachina Bharishat, to help him understand the nature of the jiva in this material world, is that of a dog. Narad Muni explains that just like you take a stray dog, and the stray dog being hungry for food, suffering, he has no food, no shelter, he goes to different houses and he barks. First he goes to one house and barks. The owner comes and he thinks, oh wow, what a cute little puppy or what a cute little dog. Here, come, I'll give you some food. And the owner comes and gives him nice food and the dog is happy. Then the dog goes to another house. And this time the owner opens the door, and this time the owner becomes really angry. Oh, what is this stupid dog doing in my house? And the owner starts shouting at the dog, blaspheming the dog, and starts throwing stones and asking the dog to leave. Then the dog goes to another house. And then the owner opens the door. Then this time, the owner, he just becomes very scared and just freaks out and just runs away. So in this way, Narad Muni explains to King Prachina Bharishat that there's this suffering stray dog and he's going to different houses, to different people. But different people, they're dealing with him in different ways. Sometimes the dog is praised, sometimes the dog is cuddled, sometimes the dog is given nice food, sometimes the dog is given not so nice food, sometimes the dog is beaten up with a stick by the person who's coming to, sometimes the dog is shouted with very bad words. So in this way, different places the dog goes to, the dog is treated differently. So in the same way, Narad Muni explains that this is the position of the jiva in this material world. Through the existence of a jiva in this material world, sometimes he's in the position of Brahma. In 9th canto, I was reading, in the last chapter of 9th canto, in one purport, Prabhupada explains that when the jiva, he first enters into material existence, when he falls down from the spiritual world to material existence, the first birth he takes is that of Lord Brahma. And then Prabhupada explains, being overcome by ignorance in sense gratification, he loses that position of Brahma and he gets degraded all the way from Brahma down to the position of an ant. So in this way, Narad Muni has explained, just like the dog is going different places and being treated differently, in the same way the jiva, through the course of his existence in material nature, sometimes he's great Brahma, sometimes he's Indra, sometimes he's a great king, offered so much respect and praise, he has so much opulence and so much name and fame, and other times, he's just a cockroach, and other times he's just a low-born dog or a pig eating stool. So in this way, he undergoes different existence in material nature. So in this way, there's so many powerful examples given by different authorities in the Bhagavatam, helping us understand the nature of life in this mature existence. I'll read the purport, we'll discuss little step by step. So in the purport, Prabhupada explains that the quivering quality of mature existence, which comes from identification with matter, or from thinking oneself under the mature influence of philosophical speculation to be God, can be eradicated by devotional service to the Lord, by the mercy of the person I have Godhead, Vasudeva. Okay, so in the previous two texts, Maitreya Rishi was explaining the nature of the jiva in this mature existence, how it's all an illusory state of existence. Now in text 12, text 13 and also text 14, Maitreya Rishi will give the solution. Okay, we're covered over by this mass ignorance, thinking we're this body, thinking we're the enjoyer and controller, but how do we get out of this ignorance? How do we get out of this ignorance, which is the cause of all of our suffering? Now Maitreya Rishi in 12, 13 and 14 will explain. It is through by bhakti yoga, by taking shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, one can overcome this ignorance. And that's what Prabhupada is explaining in the purport also. That's why if you look at the Sanskrit of today's verse, it will say Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena. So by engaging in Bhagavad Bhakti Yogena, one can overcome this ignorance. I'll continue with the purport. As discussed in the first canto, because the application of devotional service to Lord Vasudeva invites pure knowledge, it quickly detaches one from the material conception of life. So that's that famous verse from second chapter, Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janayati Asavairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahitukam. So Krishna is, or Sutta Goswami, he's explaining that as a natural byproduct of devotional service, one gets endowed with knowledge, and as a result of knowledge, one also becomes detached. So in this purport, Prabhupada is explaining that first, one engages in devotional service, and then immediately after devotional service comes pure knowledge. And Prabhupada is saying, after pure knowledge, as a result of pure knowledge, one becomes detached. So detachment, Prabhupada is explaining, is a byproduct of knowledge. I remember one time Ghanshyam Prabhu, when he was studying Bhagavad Gita, he was explaining this point, that in the Shastras, whenever we come across this word called jnana, or knowledge, or tattva, philosophy, we should by default take it that whenever the Shastras they talk about knowledge or tattva, philosophy, they don't refer to theoretical knowledge. By default, we should take it they refer to both theoretical knowledge and vijnana, or realized knowledge. In mature civilization, theoretical knowledge is given great importance. But in Shastra, if you read the Shastras, just having theoretical knowledge is not considered as knowledge. One might have memorized a lot of verses or have theoretical knowledge, but if he's not practically able to apply that or live that knowledge in his real life, then according to Shastra, actually he has no knowledge. There's no value to whatever knowledge he has. So in this way, Ghanshyam Prabhu is explaining to us that whenever this word jnana comes, just like janma karma chame divyam evam yovati tatvataha trakta deham punarjanma netimam iti sojana. Krishna is saying that if one has knowledge of my activities, my birth in this material world, then one get liberated, one will go back home, back to Godhead. So when Krishna is talking about this knowledge of his janma and karma, he's not referring to theoretical knowledge. Because so many scholars and professors are there of Hinduism, of Vedic studies, Sanskrit, they also have this knowledge, theoretical knowledge of Krishna's janma and activities. But according to Shastra, that's not real knowledge. There's no value to knowledge because they don't have that realization, they're not acting based on that knowledge. So this is one example when Krishna is saying that by knowledge of this you can go back home, back to Godhead. That's not just referring to theoretical knowledge, but it includes vijnana. So by default, whenever knowledge, this word jnana or tattva comes, by default it refers to not just theoretical but vijnana also. So one of the symptoms of knowledge, Prabhupada is explaining, is that one becomes detached. If one isn't detached from mature existence, then he's not considered to be very knowledgeable. And it quickly detaches one from mature conception of life and thus revives one's normal condition of spiritual existence even in this life and frees one from the material winds which causes one to quiver. So going back to analogy, there's the reflection of the moon on the water, and Prabhupada is explaining the thing that is making the water quiver and at the same time the reflection of the moon quiver is the winds, the different winds that's coming. And these different winds one can take as the three modes of material nature. Just like if you listen to the weather report at the end of the news, there will always be the weather forecast at the end of Channel 7 News, Channel 9 News. And these weather reporters, they'll say, okay, there's a southeasterly wind coming, or there's a northeasterly wind coming, or there's a westerly wind coming this way. So there's different winds coming from different directions. And a wind coming from this direction will push me this way. A wind coming from behind me will push me forward. So in the same way, we have the three modes of mature nature, and they push the jiva to act in different ways. The mode of goodness pushes the jiva to get illuminated with knowledge. The mode of passion pushes the jiva to move towards more and more hankering, more and more desire to engage in sense gratification. The mode of ignorance, the wind of ignorance, pushes the jiva to become more and more lazy, to sleep more and more, and to go more and more into ignorance. One time, one of my godbrothers, he was attending one of my Guru Maharaj's outreach classes to Westerners, and after the class he was telling me that, this class, Guru Maharaj, he came up with an amazing analogy to describe the three modes of mature nature. I've never heard of this analogy before. And Guru Maharaj was saying, my godbrother of mine, he was explaining that, Guru Maharaj was comparing the three modes of mature nature to the different winds, and how different winds come in different directions, and they push us in different ways. And this godbrother was saying that, wow, this is such an amazing analogy I never heard of before, but it really made sense, and all the people in the audience, they were very much, amazed by this analogy. And I also had never heard this before. But then when I was reading this purport, then okay, actually this same analogy is there in Bhagavatam. My Guru Maharaj was just repeating whatever is there in Bhagavatam. So like this, there's so many, actually this is Prabhupada extending the analogy even more. So it's amazing how many analogies Prabhupada comes up in his books. If you list all of the analogies in all of Prabhupada's books, it will be like one big, super huge book, hundreds and hundreds of analogies Prabhupada comes up with. And whenever we see analogies of Prabhupada, we can take this as a sign of Prabhupada's compassion. Sometimes devotees, they used to ask Prabhupada, how are you able to come up with so many beautiful examples of body and soul, so many beautiful examples and analogies? And what was Prabhupada's response? Prabhupada said, because I'm always thinking about it. Day and night I'm thinking about newer and newer examples to help all the people of society understand this important truth of Krishna consciousness. So this is the mercy or the compassion of the Acharya, that is thinking of newer ways to put forward the message in a way that people can understand. So as all of us as preachers also in this movement, it's also our responsibility to also take time out to also think and contemplate how can we deliver this message of Krishna consciousness to others in a way they can understand, just like Prabhupada was meditating. Prabhupada's had different servants. Harishari Prabhu, he was mentioning that usually there will be a certain amount of minutes or amount of words that Prabhupada will dictate into his dictaphone early in the morning. So Prabhupada will start translating and dictating into his microphone at 1 a.m. and will go till 5 a.m. For 3-4 hours. Prabhupada will just translate and dictate his purports. And his personal servant will get that, and he can see in the logbook that how much has Prabhupada spoken and how many words he has spoken, like that. One day, Harishari Prabhu, he was saying that sometimes or some days, Prabhupada would speak very less or wouldn't speak much. And he was explaining that sometimes what would happen, that Prabhupada, he would think so much just to think of a proper word, a right word to translate a particular Sanskrit word, or a right word, or a right phrase, or a right sentence to put in his purport. And that's why Prabhupada, for like an hour or two, will just think more and more, how I can put this in a way that people can understand. So in this way, that's why early in the morning, Prabhupada, he wanted complete silence, because he was thinking and meditating so much. How can I write these purports? How can I write or translate these verses in a way people in the future, not just for 1 generation, 2 generations, but for hundreds of generations in the future, people can understand this and take this into their lives. So this was the mercy of Prabhupada, that day and night, Prabhupada was just contemplating again and again, how can I present this message in a way people can understand. So it's also our responsibility to also put the time out to also contemplate and think how we can help others. I'll continue on. Only knowledge and devotional service can elevate one towards the path of liberation. The development of knowledge for the purpose of knowing everything without rendering devotional service is considered fruitless labor, and one cannot get the desired result by such labor of love. So we discussed this point in Uddhava Gita on Saturday. So Krishna was explaining to Uddhava that the endeavors of the Jnanis, when they're just simply studying the Shastras, the Vedas, mentally speculating, they're studying, but if as a result of the studying they're not developing attraction towards Krishna, as a result of study, if they're not developing bhakti towards Krishna, then all that laborious study and mental speculation is simply a useless waste of time. And Krishna, he gives Uddhava 5 different examples to understand this. He explains that the classical example we hear is that of Brahma. He says in his prayers to Krishna in the 10th canto Bhagavatam, Brahma says, it's just like beating an empty husk of rice. So the husk is empty, and what's the point of beating it? You know, you beat it again and again and again and again, but there's no rice inside. So what's the use of it? So in this way, through that example, Brahma is, the point he's trying to make out that simply studying without developing love for Krishna is just a waste of time. And you would call that person, if you see someone just getting an empty rice and just beating again and again, what would you call that person? That this person is stupid, this person is mentally retarded, there's something seriously wrong with that person. So that's the position of these Jnanis. Externally, we call them Jnanis, that they're Jnanis or in knowledge, but actually Brahma is saying, although we call them Jnanis, actually they're not Jnanis, they're Ajnanis. Actually they're very stupid and unintelligent. Just like a person beating an empty rice husk, he's just stupid, he's just acting like an idiot. So in the same way Brahma explains to Krishna, although these Jnanis are called Jnanis, although these Jnanis are called knowledgeable, actually they're not Jnanis, actually they're not knowledgeable, actually they're just stupid, and actually they're just wasting their life, they're just wasting them time. In Uddhava Gita, Krishna, he goes one step forward, and Krishna, he explains to Uddhava that not only are these Jnanis stupid, not only are these Jnanis, so-called Jnanis, not knowledgeable and simply wasting their time, but actually all these Jnanis, they're actually miserable. If we study the Bhagavad Gita, the Yoga Ladder, we understand that firstly, the Jiva, he engages in karma kanda to enjoy the material pleasures of this world. Then after enjoying, he gets frustrated, enjoying material sense gratification. So then what does he do? He goes to jnana, because he doesn't want to suffer the pains or the frustration of taking to sense gratification and being defeated. So the very reason the jiva or the soul, he gives up karma kanda and goes to jnana kanda, is to stop his suffering. So to stop suffering which comes due to sense gratification, he goes to the platform of jnana, thinking if I engage in jnana kanda, if I engage in studying the Shastras, I can get liberated, I can merge into Brahma Jyoti, and I can stop all suffering. But Krishna explains in Uddhava Gita, not only is the Jnani stupid and unintelligent, but the Jnani is actually also always miserable. Even though the very reason the Jnani, he gives up karma kanda and he takes to jnana, the very reason he does that is to stop suffering. But when he's engaging in jnana kanda but not developing love and devotion for Krishna, that same suffering is still there, it doesn't go away. How? Krishna explains, he gives 5 examples to help us understand. He says, they are just like someone is maintaining a cow, but that cow doesn't give any milk. That cow doesn't have the potency of giving milk. Then what's the end result of that? The owner of that cow is miserable, because he's spending so much time, effort, money in maintaining the cow. Just to maintain one cow, one has to get so much grass and has to have so much land just to maintain one cow. So the owner of that cow, he's putting so much hard work, endeavor to maintain the cow, but he's not getting anything in return. He's not getting any milk. So that owner of the cow is miserable. Again, another example Krishna gives, just like the husband of an unchaste wife. He's miserable because he's showing so much love and affection, taking care of the wife, giving her accommodation, buying food, ingredients, ornaments. From his side, he's trying to do everything. But what is he getting in return? What is he getting reciprocation? The wife is unchaste, the wife is having affairs with other men. So what is the condition of that man having an unchaste wife? Is simply more misery and more suffering. Another example Krishna gives is just like having wealth which isn't used for the right purpose. If someone has a lot of wealth and if he's not engaging that wealth for the right purpose, then as a result of that, he will accrue more and more sins, more and more karma, and that karma will come to hit him in the future. And as a result of that, he will undergo more suffering. Another example Krishna gives, a body maintained by others. Just like a person who has a body which is completely dependent and maintained by others, that person, he is always miserable. In the same way, Krishna is explaining that these jnanis who are simply studying but not developing love for Krishna, they're always miserable. So imagine someone, they're just completely immobilized or disabled and they can't do anything. For their whole existence, they have to rely on everyone else. To eat, they need to rely on someone else. To move, they need to rely on someone else. Even to go to the toilet, they have to rely on someone else. That's such a miserable state of existence to be in. To have a body which is simply maintained by others. So in this way, Krishna, he gives, there's a fifth one, I forgot, but these are four ones which I can remember. There's another fifth one he gives also to Uddhava. So in this way, Krishna, he gives, just like all these persons are miserable, maintaining unchaste wife, maintaining a cow that gives no milk. Or the fifth one is maintaining a son, which is a complete rascal. So someone might have a children, and one spends so much time, effort, money, bringing up the child with great love and attention, but the child is a complete rascal. The child never listens to us. The child never does anything we want, and the child just goes off and engages in sinful activities. Then what is the result of having such a child? One is again miserable in life. So in the same way, just like these five persons, because of maintaining this unchaste wife, cow that gives no milk, a son which is a rascal, just like all these persons are miserable, in the same way these jnanis, even though they give up karma kanda to enjoy happiness, because in the course of studying the Shastras, they're not realizing Krishna's lotus feet, they're not developing love and attraction in Krishna's lotus feet, these jnanis are also always miserable. So in this way, Krishna, he goes one step forward by explaining not only are the jnanis' labors a waste of time, but also their very practice they're doing is actually a source of suffering, is actually a source of misery for them. So in this way, the whole process of jnana is condemned by the Shastras. Jnana without any tinge of bhakti is condemned by the Shastras. Continue reading the purport. One cannot get the desired result by such labor of love. Lord Vasudeva is pleased by devotional service only, and thus his mercy is realized by association with pure devotees of the Lord. Pure devotees of the Lord are transcendental to all material desires, including the desire for the results of fruitive activities and philosophical speculation. If one wants to acquire the mercy of the Lord, he has to associate with pure devotees. Such association alone can, by degrees, release one from the quivering elements. So, because jnana, so you're explaining jnana is not the process, and Prabhupada is explaining the only way one can do this is by taking shelter of process of bhakti, and taking shelter of bhakti means taking shelter of Krishna's pure devotees. Just like in Nectar of Devotion, we're reading in the chapter which was talking about Bhava Bhakti. At one place, Rupa Goswami is explaining the power of Sangha of the pure devotees. He was explaining, Rupa Goswami explains that pure devotees' mercy is so powerful that simply just by the glance of a pure devotee,